everyone, and welcome to the Design Therapy, your creative community and outlet for all things inspirational, experimental, and finding that artist within. I'm your host, Cassie Patterson, a creative designer and brand strategist in Nashville, Tennessee. And on this episode, I have an amazing, talented artist who is all the way in South Africa, who's a brand strategist. Werner, thank you so much. Werner, I did it. I'm telling you, the Southerner in me just got it. Werner, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for being here.
That introduction deserves like applause. You know?
Oh, thank you. I've been practicing.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us, everyone, a little bit about yourself and, what your journey has been up until this point?
Okay, well, it's like I've been in the design or the creative industry almost like 20 years. I don't want to give away my age, but it's been 20 years. I actually started as a musician.
Wow.
Strangely enough, yeah. And
what type of music?
It's I think you guys would love it. It's Afrikaans music in South Africa, but it's got a folkish world music. Think Dave Matthews, think Counting Crows, that type of vibe to it.
Yeah.
And the band is also 20 years old, which is almost 20 years old, which is crazy, but that's where I started. And inside of this community, there's a lot of creatives. There was, even in the music, the movie industry, we were part of the music, part of the movies, and that's where we also met a lot of creative people. And in between all of this, I went to study visual arts and fine arts. I think you mentioned you had a sculpture on, so that was also part of what we did.
Yeah.
So I'm very visually inclined, and I love to tell stories, because a song is a story, a movie is a story, and that's my journey so far. And then later on, in life, you can't just rely on the music. So I started back in the day building websites, and it's exactly, and later on the name got changed to like your web developer or your front-end person, and that's my journey. And from web developing, it went into like more of the visual side and more of the strategy side, and later on, the very we quoted, the UX developer or the community, and
where it's kind of split in all of these different categories, like niche markets.
Exactly. And in between all of these, you sort of struggle to find your little place in the world. But I was, like you also said, storyteller and, visual person at heart from day one. And I keep on doing it. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is tell someone's brand story, a company, creative people, or even if it's a personal story, I want to put it visually for someone and help them tell it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So tell me, you mentioned that you were building websites back in the day. What was the very first one that you built? Can you describe it?
I just remember it was black and yellow, and it was...
Yes.
It was just images, when you build something, and I can't remember even if it was Photoshop back then, but I think it was still Macromedia.
Was it CS1, CS2?
I just remember the logo, or the slogan screen was that Picasso type lady, in the front of whatever that software was, but it was a yellow and black website, very image rich, and then you had to slice it up and build it with tables. That's where I started. So again, not giving away my age, so way back.
That's awesome. Well, so you said that you started out as a musician. What point in your life did you kind of find that you had that creative spark within you? Like, what was that defining moment for you?
I think, in between we started I think that's where it started. We started a record label inside of South Africa, to take all the obstacles out for like the younger bands, because we were driving like around the country without any insurance or anything like that, So
yes,
exactly. So
free living.
Exactly. So what we tried to do for younger musicians was, give them like a bus to go tour in, give them like somewhere to live, because starting out, is very difficult. And I think the first time that I actually touched on it was somebody said, listen, I've recorded this album, I need a CD cover. And I'm like, that sounds fun. And I put my hand up and I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. And I
That's
think
awesome.
it grew from that. It was literally, okay, this album is this is the message. This is what it's all about. These are the type of songs. So I had to like talk to the artist and say, listen, okay, so your story, I need to design your story. And that's where design and story meshed up. And I think from then on, it was passion all the way.
Yeah. So how do you find that? So when you're creating a story for your clients or your companies, like where do you start from ground zero? How do you find that inspiration to start an idea? What's your process like?
It's actually like I've also got it somewhat frameworked at the moment, always building on the framework. But what it is, it's get people talking, asking the right questions, because sometimes someone comes to you and say, I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
I've heard that a million times. Like,
exactly,
run with it.
So, exactly. So I think it's asking the right questions. You start with, why are you? Say, for instance, it's an artist. Why are you doing what you're doing? I think it starts with that big. I think you've heard it a lot as well. The why.
Yeah.
It's asking that a million times. Why are you doing it? Why? And then it grows into like finding out someone's brand heart or the core of what it is. It's what makes them tick. Like the purpose of the brand.
It's purpose driven. Yeah.
Exactly. And like their vision, what do they see? Their mission. Why are they doing this? And also, then you go on to, okay, who is this for? Who is this for and who's against you? Meaning, who's the competitors? So what are you doing it? Who are you doing it for and who are you against you? And it goes from that simple question, it opens up to this elaborate thing. And then you try to fit all of this into a story format. And while I was studying as well, I'm a huge fan of Joseph Campbell and like Dan Harmon, the guy that what's it called? Like Community, the series, the TV series.
Yeah.
And Rick and Morty. It's also the guy that made those. And Joseph Campbell is the hero's journey, the hero with 1,000 faces. Old Greek guy, old philosophy, as you start with, your hero is in the ordinary world, something happens, he needs to go in, and basically all movies are written like that as well. So I try to follow sort of a formula and build on what the client says and build the story around what they want to say.
Yeah.
That's sort of the process.
Your discovery process.
Exactly. It's literally, I'm not a fan of the word strategy really, but it's literally a discovery. It's a brand discovery of this person or client or business. It's asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Whatever they answer, put it in words so it makes sense to the rest of people. Yeah.
So that someone immediately can understand like who they are, what they're about, and what services or products that they're needing from them. Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
And it fits well into the UX part of it as well, because say for instance you do a portfolio or a case study. That thing needs to tell a story, and it's from the beginning of the case study, what was the problem, going through all the processes, and at the end, you have a final thing, and that's also a case study, or even an interview. When you go into an interview, you're telling your story, so people, okay, cool, and
I get it, light bulb.
Exactly. And I mean, and the biggest thing of them all is the emotional part of it, is getting that emotional hook into a product, into your album, into your website, whatever it is, getting that emotional connection with people.
And leaving an imprint,
exactly.
a lasting imprint, not something that's fleeting,
Exactly. And I mean, if it's surface, then nobody's gonna, buy into it. But if you really touch someone emotionally in the heart or in the mind or whatever, then you get remembered, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah. So how do you find your inspiration for this? If you're diving in, and how do you find that inspiration every single day? What do you do to kind of stay fresh each day?
I think you look at everything. I think the internet is awesome because there's so much out there. Obviously, there's so much crap out there as well. But, you have to.
You kind of have to dig through it.
Exactly, and it's exactly that. You have to take little parts from things that inspires you. Take little parts from that and build your own little environment or something. So it's actually, some call it research. I think research is very methodological, that big word.
That big word.
Exactly. But it's digesting content. It's and it doesn't matter what the content is. It's movies, it's music, it's art pieces. It's like you mentioned, there was a ballerina on that you interviewed. It's watching that and drawing what emotion you felt from
the stories that they're telling,
Exactly,
because it is a story.
It literally is a story. I mean, it's not in words, but the visual of it is a story. It's what you felt while watching it and translating it into something new.
Yeah. Exactly. So do you have a favorite medium? Do you like to sketch or draw out ideas, or do you start directly from the computer, or do you have like a nature walk? What do you do to kind of like, what is your favorite way to get creative?
I love sketching. And I think, sketching is a very powerful tool because it's a
some of it's a lost art at times, especially for graphic designers. We kind of like, let's just shove this to the side and go right to the computer.
I mean, people are getting very good with like just sketching on the PCs and stuff, so that's nothing wrong with it. But I like a pencil or pen, what you draw there, it's sketching a little storyboard. I'm going to go back to story the whole time, it's sketching a little storyboard of what you want to say. And I like to start at the end, what is the end result, and then work my way, reverse engineer almost the whole story. But yeah, it's definitely sketching.
I had lost that skill a little bit. I know that I had started out like when I was a early designer in the first like 5-6 years designing. I was sketching all the time. I had my little pack of pencils and I was so excited about it. And the longer I stayed in, corporate industry as a graphic designer, it slowly died. And in the last year, I've been trying to like, you need to take your sketchbook with you, and it's okay to take like 10 minutes and sketch out some ideas.
Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, you can go look at like photographers, you can go look at like writers, book writers, and authors and architects and all of these people, they start from, just quickly, big vision, what is it? And just make a sketch. And from that, I mean, I'm not saying everybody should do it. What I'm saying is it helps, because you just put down on paper what you can't verbalize at the moment, just put it down there. And then
I feel like it gets you out of a creative rut. It like gets you out of your same routine that you're in every single day. You're like, I got to start my day, 8 a.m., let's do this. And it kind of helps you take that mental check or that mental break to.
And it doesn't have to be a work of art, it can be little stick figures.
Mine is not a work of art. You're like, what is this gibberish? I don't understand this. I get it, but.
That's also a skill, is translating what the hell you sketched.
Exactly.
What did I do there? What the hell did I think there?
Do you speak Werner? Yes.
Yeah, translating your own notes is crazy. It's crazy.
Exactly. That's awesome. So do you have any like artistic influences, like especially in art, as a visual artist storyteller, are there some really influential artists that have affected your career and kind of your aesthetic?
I think, because I did like history of art as well, and all from the genre.
Too. I had art history a minor in college.
It's awesome. I'm till this day, I always want to go back to the Ninja Turtles, like the Leonardo's. But I think, there was a period that really stood out for me was like the pop artists, like Andy Warhol, Roy
Yep.
Lichtenstein, all of those guys, because they took the very formal art, put it in a blender and made their own smoothie,
Yeah, they did.
let's be totally different. And that was
I'm
also
gonna put a soup can and make it famous.
exactly. And then the one is a balloon. This is art.
I went to
I think,
Art Basel last year in Miami. Did you hear about the banana that they sold? Yeah, I
it's
saw it.
crazy.
Insane. The entire theme was banana, like all through Art Basel in Miami on South Beach. Everywhere you went, there was like people were trying to sell bananas. I'm like, I can get this 11 cents at Kroger with a piece of tape.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I think one of the subjects was also, why art is art. And I think it's a question that's still out there that's, like many people touched on it, but some people it's art for art's sake. And I think the Dadaists like Marcel Duchamp that made that toilet urinal and just slapped his name on it. And he's like, yeah, that's art.
I mean, it's subjective, just like anything subjective in the world. We're not all going to have the same aesthetic or the style or approach to solving a problem. And it's good to have that different perspective.
Exactly. And again, it's your story. I mean, you really can't be wrong because it's what you put out there. So I'm not going to judge
the authenticity of it.
Exactly. And I always like the backstory of anything, because the artist itself is what I, are drawn to. Not always the art, but the artist itself. Why did you do this? What influenced you? How did you come up with this? It's always an interesting conversation.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, do you have any obstacles that you face throughout your career, or as an artist, as a designer, as a musician? What kind of obstacles do you really run into generally?
I think I'm going to tie this back into the story thing. Is sometimes you want to say something or you want to put out something, but you don't always know how. Or it makes sense for you, but for people in general, it's not going to make sense, So it's finding that hook, and I think that is even with the song, you're pouring your heart out in a song, but are they gonna relate to it? So I think that's not an obstacle, but it's something to work towards, or something to get over, or
it's a problem to solve.
Exactly. And that I think, more in the UI stuff, it's solving a problem with whatever you're drawing or a website. You're supposed to solve a problem. And I think that is sometimes the obstacle. The biggest obstacle is finding the correct way to solve the problem. Because there's many ways. It's like a Swiss Army knife, it's finding the right one. And
that's such a good example. I like that visual. There's different ways. There's different tools to get there, but we all eventually get to that solution if we stick to a plan and get it done.
There's different ways to skin a cat. It's exactly.
Yeah. So I know as artists, we're constantly creating, and on a daily basis, it's our job every single day to get up and solve problems and create value. Do you ever feel like you find burnout or a struggle with that, and how do you combat it?
I think if you have because I know that there's something like burnout and there's something like a creative block and stuff like that, but I think if you've got a process, a good enough process, it doesn't have to be speak and span, polished or anything, but I think if you've got a process of going through the steps and then finding something, then you don't run into creative block as much, because you're just like, okay, let's go back to the beginning. Let's start from square one. And it's just, what do I want to say? Why am I doing what I'm doing? If you start there, I think ideas flow out of it. So I think it's and it's difficult. I mean, I don't know. I struggle every day, but I try to go back to a systematic process or framework to start from the beginning and say, listen, let's just go back and decide why we are doing this and then go from there. Yeah.
Sometimes starting over is like the best approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, change is good as a holiday, but
Yeah.
in this case, it's okay. But what I wanted to say here doesn't make sense. Throw it out, start from the beginning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have such a strong visual aesthetic on social media, and you have such a cool way that you represent. Where do you get your ideas for why you approach social media the way that you do? Because it's such a cool a way that you design. I like it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. What I think from the beginning, I did the same as everyone is, as just get my message across. But then I thought to myself, listen, if I'm not even relating to this, no one's going to relate to it. The normal 10 ways to do this and this is how I did it, so you can do it. That doesn't make sense to me. What I like is, what's a favorite movie of yours? Just
don't laugh.
As an exercise.
I have. Do you want an old movie or a new movie?
Any movie.
Okay, my old version is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes by Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell from 1954 or 53.
Okay, perfect. What I will do is in this scenario is take that movie and take a concept and see how these two relate, and explain it in a way that you would understand, because the character, the plot of the
I can
movie.
sing every single song in that movie.
Exactly. So if I'm going to use, say for instance, I'm making a post that, you would like, is I will take that movie, take the topic that I want to talk about or the story or whatever, and see how I can connect those two. And okay, this is the character, so this is my point, and how the character goes through the movie, and just tell.
I hope that you do one for my movie now. I'm going to be
definitely
on the lookout for it. Have you seen Gentlemen Prefer Blondes? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I don't know. I have to go back to my little mind palace and see if it's somewhere there. I can't remember.
It's such a classic. It's so good. It's a musical. It's a Technicolor musical. So it's a little cheesy, but it's awesome.
Great, but that's where I'll start. The next time I've got a concept that I can put into a movie like that, that's where I go. And that's how I usually do all the other things. Because just an example is be the Sherlock Holmes of your company, a UX designer. You need to do research, you need to get behind the truth, and that's what Sherlock Holmes does. So I take the movie and I take the topic, and this is what Sherlock, exactly.
Yeah. That's so cool. I love that approach. It's very unique. I when I ran across your profile, I was like, I have never seen this before. This is like a new idea and approach, a way to visually represent things.
Exactly. And I think, because, I come from, like I said, from a movie and a music and a, fine art background. And that's how I relate.
Sense. Now I know why it's there. It absolutely makes sense getting to know you. Yes.
Exactly. And that is my approach, and I always feel that, you need to put out in the world what you have an experience in, what you have experience in. Put that out in the world, because it's the only place you can talk from. So that's why I'm not always a fan of, the cliches. I'm not a fan of the cliches, because it doesn't come from a place of experience, and that's why I love, talk your own, not truth, but your own experience. Just put it out there, because you can't be wrong. You can't be wrong if it's your own experience. Exactly.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I know you're in South Africa. So does your city where you're living, does it have a huge influence on your artwork?
Definitely. I think, in South Africa, we've got 11 official languages.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's crazy. And we almost speak all the languages, and we've got this combined language name. It's like Fanagalo. That's what we call it. It's like, I think the people in the mines, that worked in the mines, you know, with different backgrounds, different races, different cultures, and they all worked together and they started this language, you know, so everybody understands everybody. And I think my city influenced me in that way because, you know, it's thinking not just about my lane, but thinking a bit broader. You know, this person will relate to it, this person will relate to it in this way. And I think in the city, we've got this thing, proudly South African. It's a label that, you know, because it's always different, because of different cultures and stuff, we've got this almost a stamp, you know, so definitely influence that. You know, sometimes you do something that will cater for everybody, you know, so it's a bit more, your audience just opens up a bit. So definitely influenced by that, yeah.
Well, here's the big question. Do you like Trevor Noah?
He's a South African. No, I love Trevor Noah.
I love him. He's my favorite comedian. I was like, yes.
It's crazy. And I know a lot of his things, you know, is because his background's also South African, you know, so sometimes I'm like, that's what he meant. And
I'm sure you pick up on a lot more because he probably has a lot more references. A lot of Americans over here don't typically catch on to.
Exactly. And it's crazy how he twists it. And I mean, we've been following since, you know, he started, you know, where
I have too.
Exactly. And he's made it huge there, which is awesome. Yeah, it's crazy. And another fan, you know, like Charlize Theron. I don't know.
That's who I would say my modern day favorite actress is.
Yes.
Atomic Blonde, yes.
Exactly.
That made me want to get into kickboxing. I was like, I am woman.
And that lady's range is insane because, I mean, and another thing is she's got that classic, you mentioned the classic. She's got that classic beauty, you know, and that's freaking, if there's a movie coming out, I'm like, yeah. I'm
there too. I'm in the first one in line. Shirley,
exactly.
I love you. Just be my best friend.
Exactly. And I love it when she sometimes talk Afrikaans on whatever social media or something, and you're like, yeah, I know. It's usually swear words in Afrikaans, but
really? That's awesome. Yeah. I'm going to be on the lookout now. I'm going to go and scroll through.
Exactly. It's funny.
So cool. Well, I have a couple more questions. So I have to ask this for everybody that comes on the series. What would your ultimate dream project be? Like unlimited budget, unlimited time, space, collaboration, anywhere in the world. What would that project look like for you?
Yo. That's a thinker. But I think, you know, I think what we do as artists as well, you know, is sometimes giving, you know, not sometimes, but you try to give back. And I think I like the idea of doing something. I'm not always, you know, not a charity project or you know, making money for a charity. That's not, you know, I think it's changing people's viewpoints, you know, if it's, and I mean, especially what's happening there at you guys as well. And we've got you know, we've got a history that's very much the same, you know, and but it's making a change or changing a perspective that people are, you know,
it's like a revolution. It's a revolution of change, you know, in society.
Exactly. And I'm big on, you know, I hate injustice. You know, it doesn't matter size, form, or whatever it is.
Exactly.
If there's an injustice, it doesn't matter, you know, if it's a bully picking on an ant, you know, there's an injustice or something, you know, from small topics to big topics. I like to give a point of view or, you know, help the process along of getting over this injustice, you know, and that would be a perfect project. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it looks like, but that would be, I think if I see
if you could create a campaign maybe and have a campaign that went worldwide to help that change and that evolution.
Exactly. And where it would be, I'm a big fan of open spaces and wood and, you know, like cement, because in my
would it be experiential design? Would it be like interactive?
It would definitely be interactive, like an installation or something, you know, where you can have different mediums, you know, have people with different perspectives even if it's like a graphic design part, and this one builds something out of cement, this one builds something out of wood, and we mesh this all together and it represents something. That would be awesome.
You're going to have to go into that and really think about that. I can't wait to see like what your final idea would be. I'm going to challenge you. Try to write that down and see what it kind of comes into.
I'm making a note.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, tell me some things that, some advice that you've been given throughout your career that's really stuck with you. Like, what is something that you've been told, that you've learned throughout the years that really has resonated with you as a creator?
I think the biggest advice I got was go where the fear is. I mean,
okay.
Go, I mean, get in that uncomfortable
You made a
zone.
post about that lately, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. You know, it's go where the fear is, go where it's uncomfortable, because that's where change happens, you know. And I think we mentioned it, like emotion is a very powerful thing. You know, so you want to design something or you want to say something and make that emotional connection. Take out fear, take out anxiety, you know. That's what I like, you know, and you can only do it if you're in that space of fear or anxiety.
You won't be able to change unless you like tap into it and touch it and feel it and experience it. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest advice I got, you know, is and I like to bring it always in the foreground. You know, sometimes you want to say something, but you're afraid of if you're going to say it, then you're going to get backlash. But go for it. Go for it.
I feel like us over here, like in the States, we're tapping into that fear right now. We're tapping into that change and saying, you know what, this is no longer acceptable. And we're changing as a society and we need to move forward.
Exactly. And you can't always walk on like eggshells, because nothing's going to change, you know. So eyes closed, go for it.
Do it. I love that. Yeah. So the last question is, what is some advice that you want to leave with others in your industry? Like, what is something you would really want others to know that you've learned that's really stuck with you as an artist?
Don't take work and stuff too seriously.
Amen.
It should be fun. I mean, I'm a firm believer of, and I'm sometimes get a lot of flack for this, you know, because I mean, sometimes you're in a situation which is very serious. But I mean, it doesn't have to be serious. And I'm a firm believer that, you know, if it's not fun, why the hell do you do it? You know, so I think that's the fun. All the message, if I can give a message, you know, to the millions around the world, is have fun with it.
Have
you know,
some fun, y'all.
Exactly. And it's easy to do. I know. I mean, I struggle with it a lot. You know, I take this project very seriously because it's personal, or I need to get this done. But you know, just to make that switch and just have a little fun with it. It will twist and it will mold to something else. And I think more people can relate to it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Easy. I love that.
Easy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining with me today. I had such a wonderful conversation. I love getting to know you, and it makes so much sense now, your aesthetic and who you are and like your journey and how it all kind of connects.
It's only a pleasure, and it's always fun. It's fun. And I mean, you've also been doing this for so long, and you all, you know, like, thank you for giving us a platform to do it.
Yeah, well, we'll all give each other a platform.
Exactly. And I mean, the more we talk about the things, I think it's better. So this is why this is actually great, you know, talking to people about it. Yeah. Not just be in your own little bubble and put it out. Yeah.
Letting people know who it is behind the post, you know, behind the websites, behind the art, like understanding, like you said earlier, understanding who the artist is more than anything.
I'm still not there with the photo. I'm trying my best, you know, to actually put a photo out there, but I'm struggling, man.
I've been doing modeling for the last year and a half now. And I was horrendous when I first started. And I finally feel like I've got a good profile pic. In the last like 6 months, I was like, yes, this is so good. I can finally feel proud of my pic I've got out here.
That's exactly, because I've got one picture that I liked.
Get a photographer and just practice. You just got to call, or just get a tripod and just practice in front of it.
Exactly.
Angles.
Because if I see a camera lift, I go in robot mode.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, tell everybody where they can find you, follow you, heart you, like you, subscribe. Let us know all the links.
I think mainly Instagram at the moment, brandflex.co. And I've launched a mini website which is also the same, brandflex.co. And yeah, I think it's website and Instagram, and I've got my LinkedIn profiles and stuff. And
I'm sure some people will find you on LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn too. Yeah, I'll connect with you.
Exactly. Connect. And also the music stuff. I never pun this. I don't know why, but the music stuff, the band name is Klopjag. It's Klopjag. It's the Afrikaans word for raid.
Oh,
Klopjag.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so
definitely send me that and I'll put that in the bio for sure.
I will definitely do that, yeah. But that's where people can find me. Do you need a physical address?
No. Unless somebody over here wants to take a flight or a boat.
It's going to be a long travel, yeah.
Especially with all of this stuff going on with Corona.
That's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. But thank you for the interview, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on here. If everyone wants to know more about the design therapy, make sure that you're following the design therapy at YouTube, on Instagram, and my website is thedesigntherapy.co. Make sure that you like, heart, and subscribe. And I appreciate you joining us on this episode. Stay safe out there. Bye.